I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, but here I am, sharing my story with whoever might be reading it. My name is Jake, and my wife, Emily, and I had what I thought was the perfect marriage. We were the couple everyone admired, the kind of love story that made people believe in fairy tales. We met during college, got married right after graduation, and spent nearly a decade building a life together. But the past few months have been a whirlwind of deceit, betrayal, and the kind of pain I never imagined I'd feel. It all started when Emily began acting strangely. She seemed distant, more absorbed in her phone than in our conversations. I noticed her laughing at text messages that came in at odd hours and her habit of locking her phone whenever I entered the room. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe she was stressed at work, or maybe she was just going through a phase. But as the days turned into weeks, those little signs became impossible to ignore. The real wake-up call came when I found a receipt from a restaurant I knew she wouldn't go to alone. It was dated for a Tuesday night, and I distinctly remembered that she had claimed she was going to a team bonding dinner. It didn't sit right with me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. When I confronted her about the receipt, she got defensive. "It's just a work dinner, Jake. Why do you care so much?" she snapped. I tried to brush it off, but suspicion gnawed at me. Then came the night that changed everything. I was running errands when I decided to stop by her office to surprise her with dinner. I had a feeling that something was off, and I was desperate for clarity. As I approached the office, I saw her car parked outside, but the lights in her office were off. Confused, I walked to the back entrance and noticed that the door was slightly ajar. Curiosity got the better of me, and I pushed it open just a crack. What I saw made my blood run cold. There was Emily, tangled in a passionate embrace with Ryan, one of my so-called friends, a colleague I had trusted and included in our social circle. The sight of them together, the way her hands roamed his back, shattered something deep inside me. I stood frozen, my heart racing and my mind reeling. I felt like a silent intruder in this twisted version of my life, watching the woman I loved betray me in the most intimate way possible. I retreated quietly, feeling sick to my stomach. It was as if the ground had shifted beneath my feet, and I was left teetering on the edge of an abyss. I got in my car and drove aimlessly for what felt like hours, trying to make sense of what I had just witnessed. I thought about all the moments we had shared, the laughter, the plans for the future. How could she do this to me? How could he? The drive home was a blur. I felt angry, hurt, and utterly betrayed. When I finally got home, I knew I had to confront her. The thought of her lying to my face, pretending everything was fine, made my skin crawl. I waited until she came home, rehearsing what I needed to say in my head. I wanted to be calm, to approach this rationally, but inside I was a storm of emotions. When she walked through the door, I could see the glint of happiness in her eyes, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within me. "Hey Jake, you're home early," she chirped, completely unaware of the bomb I was about to drop. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady although my heart raced. "What's up?" she asked, feigning innocence as she took off her shoes. "I saw you with Ryan," I said, the words spilling out before I could second-guess myself. Her face went pale, the color draining from her cheeks. She opened her mouth to speak but quickly closed it like a deer caught in headlights. I watched as her brain scrambled for excuses, for words that could possibly make this any better. "Jake, it's not what it looks like," she finally stammered, her voice shaky. "We were just talking, I swear." I felt rage bubble up inside me. "Talking, really? Because it looked like you were doing a lot more than that." As I confronted her, I realized there was no way I could let this go without a fight. I had to know the truth, and I had to be prepared for what came next. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of a long, painful journey, a journey that would lead to revenge, and a reckoning I never thought I would have to undertake. Now, my mind was racing. What was I going to do? I had a plan forming, revenge bubbling beneath the surface, and soon I would execute it in a way that would ensure she watched the consequences unfold. But for now, I needed to get out of that house. I needed to think, to strategize, and to prepare myself for the battle ahead. The confrontation had left me reeling, but deep down, I knew that I couldn't let my emotions dictate my actions just yet. I had to think strategically. Emily's reaction had surprised me. She was flustered, caught off guard. In a way, that gave me an edge. I decided to take a step back and observe her, gather more evidence before making any rash decisions. This was not just about revenge. It was about ensuring that I had everything I needed to dismantle the life we had built together. I spent the next few days in a haze of anger and betrayal. Emily went about her routine, acting as if nothing had happened. She was back to her usual self, laughing with friends, sharing inside jokes, and being the charming Emily I had fallen in love with. But every time she reached for her phone, I felt a surge of rage. I knew she was texting Ryan, planning their next rendezvous while I was left in the dark, nursing my wounds. I needed proof, something concrete that I could use to confront her with. That weekend, I decided to use my work schedule to my advantage. I took a couple of days off, feigning a cold to stay home and keep an eye on her. I assumed she would be more discreet, but I was wrong. On the second day, after she left for what she thought was a regular work day, I waited until she had been gone for about an hour before I decided to put my plan into action. I had a friend who was a private investigator. Let's call him Mark. We had grown close over the years, and I knew he'd help me out. I called him up and we arranged to meet for coffee. I explained the situation, and as I spoke, I felt a mixture of relief and anger at finally talking about it. Mark listened attentively, nodding with understanding as I described my suspicions and what I had seen. "Jake, I'll help you gather evidence," he said, determination etched on his face. "You deserve to know the truth, and we'll get you the proof you need." Feeling a sense of purpose, I spent that afternoon giving him the details of Emily's daily routine, her work hours, her gym schedule, and any other information that might help him catch her in the act. I felt a strange sense of empowerment, knowing that I was taking control of this situation. Emily had thought she could pull the wool over my eyes, but I was ready to show her just how wrong she was. The following week, Mark's updates were constant. He told me he had seen Emily and Ryan at the same restaurant I had discovered from the receipt, laughing over dinner like nothing was wrong. He caught her sneaking out of the gym early, meeting Ryan in the parking lot, and even exchanging kisses, all while I was at home, utterly oblivious to her betrayal. Each piece of evidence he shared felt like a dagger to my heart, but it also fueled my resolve. I was no longer just a victim. I was plotting my revenge. One evening, as I prepared to confront Emily again, I meticulously organized everything Mark had gathered. I printed out photos, receipts, and even text message exchanges that confirmed her infidelity. Feeling like a general strategizing for battle, I set the stage for what would inevitably become a confrontation that would shake the foundation of our marriage. When Emily got home that night, I could tell she was in high spirits. She'd just come back from a dinner with friends, wearing an outfit I recognized from our earlier conversations, one that I knew Ryan had complimented during their secret rendezvous. I swallowed my anger and mustered a calm demeanor. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but my heart pounding. "Not again, Jake. Can't we just have a normal evening?" She begged, her fingers fidgeting nervously with the hem of her shirt. I ignored her pleas. I had to see this through. "No, we can't. I have something to show you." I pulled out the stack of evidence from the envelope I had hidden away, laying it out on the table in front of her. Each piece clicked into place, creating a damning portrait of her betrayal. Her eyes widened in horror as she began to process the truth. "What is this?" she stammered, her voice wavering. "Proof, Emily. Proof of your affair with Ryan. You thought I wouldn't find out," I said, my anger boiling over. "You thought you could just lie to my face and get away with it." Her initial shock quickly transformed into anger. "This isn't what it looks like, Jake. You have to believe me. I was going to tell you." She tried to defend herself, but it was too late. "Tell me? You were going to tell me what? That you've been cheating on me for months? That you've been lying to my face while I've been at home, trusting you?" My voice rose, matching the fury that coursed through my veins. Her excuses fell flat. She stammered about how it was just a fling, that she didn't mean for it to happen. and that Ryan was just someone she'd gotten close to during a tough time. As she spoke, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and empowerment. I realized that this was no longer about saving the marriage. I was done with her lies. The emotional roller coaster had turned into a steady march toward my goal, revenge. I wasn't just going to confront her and walk away. No, I was going to make sure she felt the weight of her choices. I would crush Ryan in every way possible, and I would make sure Emily watched as I made his life miserable, just as she had done to me. The gears of my plan were already turning in my mind, and I was ready for the inevitable fallout. After confronting Emily, I went to bed that night feeling a strange mix of anger and clarity. I was no longer the man who had been blind to his wife's infidelity. I was a man on a mission. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I mapped out my plan for revenge like a chess player strategizing the next few moves in a game that had turned incredibly personal. The first step was to deal with Ryan. He was the one who had crossed the line first, and I was determined to show him that he couldn't just waltz into my life and take what was mine. I needed to hit him where it hurt, and I knew exactly how to do it. I reached out to Mark again. After hearing about my plan, he was all in, eager to help me execute it. "You want him to regret ever touching your wife? I can help with that," he said, and I could hear the enthusiasm in his voice. It felt good to have someone in my corner who understood the gravity of my situation and was willing to help me exact my revenge. The next day, I spent hours brainstorming ideas. I knew Ryan was a competitive guy. He thrived on his reputation at work. He was one of those people who believed he was untouchable because he was charming and had a knack for getting people to like him. But what if I could tarnish that reputation? What if I could expose his true character to the people who mattered most? I knew he had a career in marketing, and I decided to dig into his work life. I spent the next few days gathering information on Ryan's professional history. I called in a few favors from some old contacts and learned about a project he had been working on recently, a big marketing campaign with significant stakes. I discovered that he had been cutting corners, overlooking necessary regulations, and bending the truth to secure deals. Everything I learned painted a clear picture of a man willing to do whatever it took to get ahead, even if it meant compromising his integrity. Armed with this information, I formulated a plan to expose him. With Mark's help, we compiled a detailed report on Ryan's dubious business practices. I felt a sense of satisfaction as I put together the pieces, knowing that I was about to turn his world upside down. I chose to deliver the report anonymously to the company's higher-ups, making sure that Ryan wouldn't see it coming. I wanted to watch as his career crumbled, and I would be right there to witness it. Meanwhile, Emily continued to deny any wrongdoing, insisting it was just a moment of weakness. I could see the guilt creeping into her eyes whenever she caught me staring at her. It was a strange feeling, seeing her so vulnerable. I was supposed to be the one broken by her betrayal, but somehow she was the one who seemed to be unraveling. I could sense her fear, and I relished it. I was in control now. As I executed my plan, I made sure to keep Emily in the dark about my intentions. Every time she tried to initiate a conversation about our marriage, I would deflect. "We'll talk when the time is right," I'd say, my voice cold and distant. It frustrated her, but I enjoyed watching her squirm. She had put me through hell, and now it was my turn to make her feel the weight of her decisions. Days turned into weeks as I awaited the fallout from my report. I watched as Ryan's confidence began to wane, his demeanor becoming more frantic. I could see the anxiety in his eyes during work events and how he began to avoid social gatherings where he might run into me. It was deliciously satisfying. Finally, the day came when I received an anonymous tip-off from Mark. "Jake, you won't believe this. Ryan's been called into a meeting with upper management. They're going to confront him about the report you sent in. They suspect foul play on his part." My heart raced with anticipation. I knew this was my moment. I made sure to position myself in the break room at the exact time the meeting was scheduled. I wanted to see the moment Ryan realized that his life was unraveling because of my actions. I could almost taste the satisfaction as I waited. As I sipped my coffee, I could see Ryan enter the room, his face pale and taut. The atmosphere was tense, and I could hear snippets of the conversation as the door to the conference room was slightly ajar. "We've received some serious allegations against you, Ryan," one of the executives said. "We need to understand your side of this before we take further action." I felt a thrill course through me as I watched the realization dawn on his face. He was cornered, and there was nowhere for him to run. I caught his eye for just a split second, and the look of panic that crossed his face was priceless. He knew I was behind this, and it filled me with an overwhelming sense of power. The meeting went on for what felt like hours, but I relished every second of it. I could see Ryan's composure slipping away as he scrambled to explain himself, his voice growing more frantic with each passing minute. I couldn't help but smile. This was just the beginning of his downfall. When the meeting finally ended, Ryan stormed out, his face flushed with anger and humiliation. I had to suppress my laughter as I saw him pace back and forth in the hallway, clearly agitated. He was unraveling in real time, and I couldn't wait to see how far I could push him. And then there was Emily. I knew the news would eventually reach her, and I couldn't wait to watch her face when she realized what I had done. She had betrayed my trust, and now I was returning the favor tenfold. The emotional high I felt as I executed my plan was intoxicating, and I began to look forward to revealing everything to her. I wanted her to see not only Ryan's career crumbling but also the consequences of her actions. As the days went by, I noticed a change in Emily. She was no longer the confident woman who had cheated on me. Instead, she was becoming increasingly anxious, always asking about my plans and trying to gauge my mood. I could tell she sensed that something was wrong, but she had no idea just how wrong things were about to get. I decided I would wait for the right moment to confront her again, to deliver the news about Ryan in a way that would hit her hard. I wanted to see the reality of her choices reflected in her eyes, the realization that everything she had built her life upon was crumbling all around her. I was ready, and I was in control. The next phase of my plan was just around the corner. The anticipation was almost unbearable. Each day, I watched Emily grow more anxious, her attempts to reach out to me becoming increasingly desperate. She would try to initiate conversations about our future, about getting counseling, even suggesting a weekend getaway to work on us. But I wasn't in the mood for reconciliation, not when I had a front row seat to the chaos I was orchestrating. As the tension built, I knew the moment was nearing when I would have to reveal everything to her. I wanted to wait until Ryan's career truly spiraled out of control, until the reality of his downfall hit him squarely in the gut, and I could serve it to Emily like a cold dish of justice. Every time I saw her biting her nails or glancing nervously at her phone, it solidified my resolve. She deserved to feel the weight of her choices, to understand that actions have consequences. The day finally came when I received a text from Mark. "Jake, it's happening. Ryan has been put on probation pending investigation. They're talking about possible termination at the next board meeting." The thrill of knowing I had successfully destabilized Ryan's entire career sent a rush through me. But what I was really excited about was how this news would affect Emily. I arranged a dinner at our favorite restaurant, a place where we had celebrated many anniversaries and milestones. As we sat down, I could see her trying to mask her anxiety with a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm glad we're doing this, Jake. I really think we need to reconnect," she said, her voice laced with hope and uncertainty. I nodded, feigning interest as I picked at my food. "Sure, Emily, let's talk." The server brought us drinks and I savored the moment, taking my time to let the tension build. I could see her heartbeat quicken as she sensed something was off. After a few minutes of small talk, I decided it was time to drop the bomb. "Emily, I need to tell you something important." Her smile faltered, her eyes widening as she braced herself for the worst. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ryan, been put on probation at work," I said, watching her closely for her reaction. "They're investigating him for misconduct related to the marketing campaign, and if they find evidence, he could be fired." Her face paled, and for a brief moment I saw a flicker of concern in her eyes. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, shaking her head in disbelief. He wouldn't do anything like that." "Oh, but he did," I replied, leaning in closer. "You see, Emily, I know all about your affair. I've been gathering evidence. I've got texts, photos, and I even submitted a report about unethical behavior at work." The color drained from her face as the realization sunk in. You did that. You went behind my back." The shock in her voice was palpable, and I could see the gears turning in her mind as she processed the consequences of her actions. "What did you think would happen, Emily? That you could betray me and I would just sit quietly? You thought you could destroy my trust and walk away unscathed?" I leaned back, savoring her growing panic. "Jake, please, you have to believe me. It was a mistake. I love you. I never wanted to hurt you." Her pleas fell on deaf ears. The facade of remorse was pathetic, and I was no longer the emotional husband who would fall for her manipulations. "You're right about one thing," I said, my voice steady. "You didn't want to hurt me. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. You wanted to juggle your perfect little life while sleeping with my rival, and now look where that's gotten you." Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time I saw vulnerability in her eyes. "What do you want me to say? I messed up. I'm sorry." "You don't get to say sorry and expect everything to be fine, Emily. You need to understand the consequences of your actions. You're about to watch Ryan's career fall apart, and I want you to realize that you played a part in it." The rest of dinner was a blur of tears and regret as she attempted to defend herself. But I was firm, refusing to let her wriggle out of responsibility. I could see the weight of the situation crashing down on her, and it was both painful and satisfying to watch. As we left the restaurant, I felt a sense of liberation I hadn't expected. I had finally laid it all out on the table, and I had taken control of the narrative. I wasn't just a wronged husband. I was the man who would ensure both Emily and Ryan faced the consequences of their betrayal. Over the next few days, Emily's anxiety began to manifest in different ways. She became almost paranoid, constantly checking her phone and whispering whenever a message came through. I could see her attempting to reach out to Ryan, but I was quick to intervene. "Don't bother. He's probably too busy dealing with the fallout of his actions to care about you right now," I said, deliberately pushing her buttons. It was a twisted game of cat and mouse, and I was the one in control. Each time I watched her squirm or attempt to divert the blame toward me, I felt a surge of power. I was no longer the victim. I was the one pulling the strings. Days turned into a week, and news of Ryan's downfall began to circulate. His colleagues turned against him, and whispers of his unprofessional behavior started to fill the office. I couldn't help but smirk as I recalled how he had acted so nonchalant, thinking he could charm his way out of any situation. The irony was delicious. Then came the day when Mark called me with even more good news. "Jake, they just announced Ryan's termination. They found enough evidence to let him go. He's out, and they're issuing a public statement about it." I could barely contain my glee. This was the final nail in the coffin, and it was all coming together perfectly. I waited until Emily came home that night, knowing she'd be in for a shock. When she walked through the door, I was already sitting at the dining table, the news article opened on my laptop. "Jake, what's going on?" she asked, the panic in her voice evident. "Have a seat, Emily. You might want to see this." As she approached, I turned the laptop toward her, revealing the headline: "Local marketing executive terminated amid allegations of misconduct." Her eyes widened as she read the article, and I saw her face drain of color. "No. No, this can't be happening," she gasped, stumbling back as if I had slapped her. "Oh, but it is. Ryan's gone, and just like that, the fairy tale you were weaving has come crashing down. You didn't just lose him, you lost everything you thought you could gain from this affair." As I delivered the crushing news, I felt a mix of satisfaction and remorse. The emotional high of revenge was exhilarating, but I also understood that this wasn't just a victory, it was the end of an era. Our marriage, once filled with love and trust, had become a battlefield, and I was ready to pull the final trigger. Emily's breakdown was hard to watch, yet oddly cathartic. She cried, pleaded, and begged for another chance, but I knew there was no going back. I had made my decision, and it was time to let the dust settle. "Emily, this isn't just about Ryan, it's about you and me. You've shattered my trust, and I can't rebuild that. I won't. You made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences." As she begged me to reconsider, I remained resolute. The story of our relationship had taken a dark turn, and as I watched her suffer the consequences of her betrayal, I felt an odd sense of closure beginning to settle in. The plans I had set into motion were now complete, and what was left was simply the aftermath of a love that had been lost. I realized that revenge had been a necessary step in my healing process, and while it wouldn't fix what was broken between us, it had given me back the power that had been stripped away. I was ready to face the next chapter of my life, one where I could finally move on and rebuild. Without the shadows of deceit hanging over me, Emily's breakdown was both heartbreaking and a relief. I never intended for things to escalate the way they did, but standing there, witnessing her despair, I felt a twisted sense of vindication. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the culmination of months of betrayal, deceit, and emotional turmoil. As I watched her, I couldn't help but reflect on where we had gone wrong. Our relationship had been built on trust and shared dreams, but with her affair, that foundation had crumbled. Emily was pleading for a chance to make things right, but I knew in my heart that there was no going back. I had seen her true colors, and now all I could feel was a sense of liberation. "Emily," I said, breaking the silence that hung heavy between us, "this isn't just about Ryan anymore. It's about who you've become. I can't pretend that everything will be okay after this." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "I know I messed up, I was stupid. I didn't think it would go this far, Jake." Her voice cracked, desperation lacing her words. "I love you, I want to fix this, just give me a chance." "Love isn't supposed to hurt like this," I replied, my tone steady. "You've shattered my trust completely. How can I ever look at you the same way again? How can I believe anything you say after what you did?" I could see her grappling with my words, the reality of the situation sinking in. For years we had built a life together, yet in a matter of months she had managed to destroy it with her decisions. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. What once was love had turned into betrayal, and now it was too late to salvage anything. "Please, let's go to counseling. I'll do anything," she pleaded, the frustration and sorrow evident in her voice. "Counseling won't fix the fact that you cheated on me with Ryan. It won't erase the pain you've caused," I said firmly. I had to be strong, even as I felt my resolve waver for a moment. "I need to think about what's best for me now." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily sat there, broken and vulnerable, while I stood firm in my decision. I had made my choice and I needed to follow through. I could feel the walls of our marriage closing in, suffocating me with regret and anger. "I'm leaving for a while," I announced, crossing my arms over my chest. "I need space to figure out what I want. This isn't a decision I can make lightly." "Leaving? You can't just walk away from this. We can work it out," she cried out, her voice rising in desperation. "Yes, I can," I replied, my heart heavy but resolute. "I need to find myself again, Emily. I've lost too much of who I am in this mess." As I packed a small bag, I felt an odd sense of clarity. I was taking control of my life, no longer trapped in a web of lies and deceit. I needed to distance myself from Emily to regain my strength and figure out the future I truly wanted. The initial pain of the separation was daunting, but I knew it was necessary. I had to remove myself from the toxic environment that had become our home. I spent the first few nights at Mark Place, a small apartment that felt foreign but safe. He welcomed me with open arms, ready to be my support system. "You did the right thing, Jake," he reassured me one evening as we sat on his couch, a beer in hand. "You deserve better than what she gave you." "Thanks, Mark. I don't know how things got this bad." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I thought I knew her, and now I feel like I don't know anything at all." "It's normal to feel lost," he said. "But this is your chance to redefine your life. Focus on what you want, not what you lost." His words resonated with me, and I realized he was right. This was my opportunity to rebuild, to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. I had spent nearly a decade invested in Emily, and now I needed to shift my focus inward. I began taking small steps, hitting the gym, reconnecting with old friends, and even picking up hobbies I had neglected over the years. I started to feel a sense of empowerment as I reclaimed my life. Each day became a new opportunity for healing. allowing me to work through the pain of betrayal and understand the lessons within the chaos. Meanwhile, I kept my distance from Emily. I made it clear that I wasn't ready to talk about our future. She sent me several messages, each one becoming progressively more desperate and pleading, but I ignored them. I knew that engaging with her would only pull me back into the emotional turmoil I was trying to escape. One evening, as I was sitting at Mark's place, I received an unexpected call from my sister, Anna. "Hey, Jake, I just heard about everything that's been going on. I'm so sorry you're going through this," she said, her voice filled with concern. "Thanks, Anna, it's been rough, but I'm getting through it," I replied, grateful to hear her voice. "I know this is a hard time, but I want you to remember that you're not alone. We're family and I'm here for you," she said. "Do you want to talk about it?" We spent the next hour talking, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Sharing my experience, my pain, and my journey toward healing was cathartic. I realized that I had a support system beyond Mark, people who cared about me and wanted to see me thrive. Eventually, Anna encouraged me to consider what I truly wanted moving forward. "You've been through hell, Jake, but don't let that define you. Focus on what makes you happy. You deserve to be with someone who values you." Her words struck a chord. I had always been the kind of person who prioritized others' happiness over my own. Maybe it was time to shift that focus and allow myself to be happy again, whether that meant working toward reconciliation with Emily or moving on entirely. As the days turned into weeks, I felt myself growing stronger. I was rediscovering my identity, and the pain of betrayal began to fade into something more manageable. I could finally see a path forward, illuminated by the lessons I had learned from this experience. But then, just as I felt I had gained some clarity, Emily reached out again. This time, she didn't just send a message. She called me, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Jake, please, I need to talk to you. It's important." I hesitated, memories of our confrontation flooding my mind, but part of me was curious. I had been avoiding her, but maybe it was time to face the music. I agreed to meet her, my heart pounding as I prepared for what was likely to be another emotional encounter. As I drove to the cafe where we had chosen to meet, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. What did she want to say? Would it be another plea for forgiveness, or had she finally come to terms with the reality of our situation? Either way, I was ready to face whatever came next. I had taken the steps to heal, and now I was prepared for the next chapter in my life, whatever it might hold. As I pulled into the cafe parking lot, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the quaint little place where we had shared countless meals. I noticed couples laughing and enjoying their time together, while I felt like an outsider, walking back into a memory that had become tainted by betrayal. When I stepped inside, I spotted Emily. At a corner table, her fingers nervously playing with her hair. She looked different, vulnerable, maybe even defeated. This wasn't the confident woman who had walked out on me just weeks ago. This was a woman who had been stripped of her facade, left to confront the consequences of her choices. "Hey," I said quietly as I approached her, unsure of what to expect. "Jake," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for coming." I took a seat across from her, crossing my arms as I prepared myself for what she would say next. "Let's get to it. What's important?" Her eyes glistened with tears as she took a deep breath. "I know I've hurt you more than I can express. I can't change the past, and I'm not here to make excuses. I want you to know how sorry I am for everything." I nodded, silently encouraging her to continue. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since you left," she continued. "I've realized just how much I took you for granted. I thought I could have my fun without facing the consequences, but this has been the hardest thing I've ever dealt with. I've lost you, and I can't bear the thought of that." I felt my heart waver for a moment. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think she had truly changed, but I had to remind myself of the pain she had caused. "Emily, you broke my trust. You shattered everything we built together. I can't just forget about it because you're feeling guilty now." "I know," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks, "but I want to do better. I want to earn your trust back, even if it takes a lifetime. I'll do anything. Just tell me what I can do." Her desperation tugged at my heartstrings, and I found myself grappling with conflicting emotions. While I appreciated her sincerity, the reality was that the damage had been done. I needed to be honest with myself and with her. Emily, I've spent weeks trying to heal from this. I've focused on rediscovering who I am outside of our relationship. It's been hard, but I've started to move on, and I can't just turn that off. She looked devastated, and I felt a pang of regret for causing her pain. I understand, she choked out. I just want a chance to prove that I can be the wife you deserve. I know I messed up, but I still love you. Love. That word lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. I had loved her fiercely, but love alone couldn't mend what had been broken. The trust, the deep connection we once shared, it felt irreparably damaged. I believe you love me, Emily, I said, my voice softening. But love isn't enough to fix this. I need time to think about what I want moving forward. I can't make any promises today, and I don't want to give you false hope. She nodded, her expression a mix of sadness and acceptance. I get it. I just hope that one day you can forgive me. As we sat in silence, I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us. It was a conversation filled with honesty, but also with uncertainty. I realized that I didn't have all the answers, and maybe that was okay. I need to take care of myself right now, I said finally. I've started to find a sense of peace, and I don't want to disrupt that. I can't jump back into this without really knowing if it's what I want. Emily wiped her tears and managed a small smile, the kind of smile that's filled with both pain and understanding. I'll respect that. Just know that I'll be here, waiting, if you decide to give us another chance. As I stood to leave, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. This wasn't the ending I had envisioned for our story, but it was a necessary step toward healing. I had taken control of my life, and while the journey ahead remained uncertain, I knew I was on the right path. Driving home that evening, I reflected on everything that had transpired. I had been through the emotional ringer, and though the scars of betrayal would remain, I felt stronger than ever. I was no longer the victim. I had turned pain into empowerment. I had learned the hard way that love could sometimes lead us down treacherous paths, but it also had the power to guide us to unexpected places of growth and self-discovery. I realized that moving forward would require not just courage, but a willingness to confront my fears and embrace the unknown. As I settled back into my temporary home, I understood that my journey was just beginning. Whether that journey would lead me back to Emily or elsewhere, I would face it head-on, determined to regain the life I once cherished. And with that resolve, I was ready to embrace whatever came next, with an open heart and a renewed sense of purpose.